Now, I found myself taking a lot of deep breaths this weekend because this is what we've been waiting for months. Since January, when Ohio State walked off the field as national champions, we've been waiting for college football to be back, and we finally made it, and we started it off right on Friday night with the Illini. But this is the first time that you're seeing me in this circumstance and this show. This is Inside the Illini Weekly with Ben Machi, and we want to make sure that you know everything that we're going to be going through here every week as the Illini play throughout the season, hoping to get to college football playoff berth maybe. So let's talk about what we're going to see here on this show. Every week, we're going to have Illinois game previews and recaps. That's why this is the first one. They played their first game Friday night. We're going to recap that one against Western Illinois, a dominant win. And then we're going to preview this upcoming Saturday when they head on the road to Duke. We're also going to dip our toes into a lot of the games across the country because I find that you can't really talk about college football if you're just talking about one team. There are ups and downs for every other team. What Iowa does, what Nebraska does, it matters to you if you're an Illinois fan because they're in the Big Ten. They may or may not be on your schedule, but you're in a Big Ten race with them. So we're going to touch on the biggest games of the week throughout the country, and then we're also going to make some game picks. I mean, what's fun about this if we don't get to put our life on the line and make some picks? So we're going to do all three of those things every single week as Illinois plays football. Now, who am I? My name is Ben Machi. This is a little player profile that we put together for me. This is my third year here at WAND News. I'm a West Virginia graduate. You see Penn State fans. Some of you might not like that. I grew up a Penn State fan. My dad went there. My grandmother still lives in State College. And even though I went to West Virginia, I just can't give it up. I do root for West Virginia as well. I just want to make that clear. Illinois, I've covered them my whole 3 years that I've been here. I will be going to the weekly pressers on Monday, talk with all the coaches about the previous week, and push forward to the next upcoming week. I also grew up in Orlando, Florida. Right in the middle of ACC and SEC country. So what I'm getting at there is I've seen this sport from a lot of different views. West Virginia's in the Big 12, Penn State's Big 10, SEC and ACC country. I was raised. Love college football, my favorite sport. And if you've never seen me before, you're not watching the WAND News at 4 o'clock. And I think that should be something that gets fixed here soon because me and Karen have a good time. All right, let's get into the actual sport, college football. Illinois, Friday night home opener against Western Illinois. It's a 52-3 win. Now, Western Illinois is an FCS school. What can you really gauge from an FCS game? It's a question that, coaches try to answer a lot too, but they schedule these games for a reason to open up the year. You're never sure exactly what your team's going to be until you step in between those white lines. And Illinois, they played well. They did everything that you want to see in a game against an FCS opponent. The defense was absolutely dominant. Luke Altmaier, third-year starting quarterback, he looked very much in control. The wide receivers, he passed it around to a bunch of different guys. They all looked pretty good, and that's a room that there's been a lot of questions about heading into this year. The offense just looked very comfortable as a whole. I mean, Gabe Akis on the defensive line, he's an NFL player playing against an FCS opponent. They looked good. They looked good. It's what you want to see when you open against an FCS team like Western Illinois was, 52-3. Let's talk specifically about Luke Altmaier. I mentioned third year starting. And you can tell it's his third year in the system. It's his third year with Barry Lunney. You can see his game stats right there. He was outstanding, 17 of 21, 3 touchdowns, 217 pass yards. He was sacked 3 times. I thought he took a couple of pretty unnecessary hits, whether that be on a couple of scrambles or just holding the ball a little too long. Now, I think part of that is that he knows He knew that Illinois was playing an inferior opponent. He wanted to make some things happen. But this guy can't get hurt. If you're Luke Altmaier, you can't get hurt. All of your hopes and dreams as an Illinois fan rests on his shoulders. He needs to make sure that he stays in the game. Get rid of the ball. Just a couple of things. And look, these are nitpicks because, like I said, 52-3, it's hard to come up with negatives. Not that I was looking for them, but, you know, there's always things to improve on. I think that's one of them. The running game. They really leaned on that offensive line that has had so much talk about them throughout the offseason. They return all 5 guys, even though there was a spot start there on Friday night for one of them. But the offensive line looked great. The running backs were really impressive. Aiden Lawfrey, you can't ask much more from him. He was very good. He had a couple of long runs that he broke that really broke the game open there early. And, you know, Caden Fagan, he's returning from a season-ending injury. He looked a little slow, a little tentative, but he's a power back. That's what he does. He lowered his shoulder a couple of times. He had a really tough touchdown run to get in to the end zone there in that game. So he's still working his way back from that injury. But Khalil Valentine, their third running back on their depth chart, boy, I liked what I saw from him. He was shifty. He was quick. And he wasn't afraid to lower his shoulder, which I really like. Okay, that's the offense. They all look good. There's Lawfrey danced in the end zone. He did that a couple of times there on Friday night. The defense looked as good as you could expect. I mentioned Gabe Akis already. He's the name. He's the NFL player that is on this team. He could have been in the NFL last year, and he came back. He decided to come back because he believed in what Brett Bielema was doing here, and he wanted to have another shot at bringing Illinois back to prominence. And they started off great. I mean, look, 29 rush yards, 1.1 rush yards per attempt. That defensive line was outstanding on Friday night. And again, that's what you would expect in a game like this against Western Illinois. One thing I did like and was happy to see was their defensive line depth. They had 8 guys that played 10-plus snaps in this game, and you saw the stats that were popped up. 29 rush yards, 134 passing yards, only 4.5 per attempt, and they had that takeaway from Akis there early on in the game. Defensive line looked great, but like I said, there's always things to clean up. That's why Brett Bielema schedules a game like this to open his season, and that's what he talked about after the game. He said, there's a couple of things that we need to clean up. They had a blocked field goal, and he did really want to see something a little bit better than they had at the end of the first half.
For sure, the end of half. I mean, you only get so many of those reps. We've been a pretty good end of half, end of game team, and that was our first live bullets, and obviously it didn't end well. I'd be the first to tell you, Luke, I told him, like, listen, you can't take that sack, man. Just can't take those sacks in those moments. So really good learning moments. You know, in adversity, there's always 2 ways to take it. You can take it and, kind of put it in the back of your head and don't learn from it or grow. And I thought our guys, really owned that at half and came out and did some things.
Yeah. There's always things that a coach is going to see in a game. But, again, a great start for Illinois. They've got a tough one coming up next week. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But let's talk about some of the biggest games of the weekend. It was a great slate, a great opening slate. We had week 0, but you can't consider week 0 the start of the season. It was this weekend, and we had a great run Friday through really last night, Monday night. Let's start with Ohio State and Texas. This was a game that I think everybody expected to be great. Number 1 versus number 3 in the country, heading into the shoe. Arch Manning, Heisman favorite for Texas, leading the Longhorns into battle. Yeah, it was not a fun game to watch. The question really was this great defense or bad offense? I'm gonna take the easy way out and say I think it was a little bit of both. Let's start with Arch Manning. Like I said, Heisman frontrunner heading into this season. He was 17 of 30 for 170 yards, a touchdown and a pick. And he just didn't look comfortable the entire game. And a lot of that is because of Ohio State and their defensive line. Ohio State always has a good defensive line. It looks like there's nothing different here this year. He just didn't look comfortable all game. He was getting rushed. He didn't take a lot of sacks, but he had a lot of pressure in his face. And it looked like he didn't trust his decision making. There's a lot of throws in a game like this, 1 versus 3, where you just got to make the decision, and you got to let go of the ball. And he wasn't really letting go of the ball, and I think that was part of the accuracy issues that you saw. I mean, there were points in this game where you said, "Oh my goodness, Arch can't hit a throw. Every throw is behind a receiver or at their feet." I expect him to bounce back, but it was a tough first game for him, and admittedly a very tough environment to go into Ohio State in your debut. Now, I know he played a couple of games last year, but this was his debut. Okay, OSU's defense looked really good. Texas did have some success on the ground. They had, I think it was 150 yards on the ground, but when you can't throw the ball, it's really tough. Julian Sayin, he was in a quarterback battle at Ohio State for the entire offseason. Everybody expected him to win the job earlier. It really went up until last week before they announced him as the starter. He didn't light anything up, but he did look much more comfortable than Arch Manning did, and he was playing at home. But he looked a little bit more in control and in command of his offense. Now, look, the final score was 14-7. Neither offense looked great, but he was 13 of 20 for 126. I mean, he didn't light anything up either. Matt Patricia, though, the new Ohio State defensive quarterback, he proves everybody wrong again. Everybody said, "What, you're hiring Matt Patricia? You could have anybody. Jim Knowles leaves and you hire Matt Patricia?" Look what he did to the number 1 team in the country. They couldn't do anything offensively. And Ohio State, they came off a national title in January, and they looked hungry. A ton of players left. They looked hungry to prove that they're here to stay, and that this group of players can do what the group of players last year did. So that's Texas Ohio State. Ugly game, but a really good win for Ohio State. They're number 1 in the country now. That new poll just dropped. We'll get to that a little later as well. All right, LSU Clemson, the battle for Death Valley, and this one wasn't quite as ugly as the Ohio State-Texas game, but it wasn't a great showing for either team. And Dabo Swinney, Clemson's head coach, said today it was like having a final exam on the first day of class. LSU got a 65 and Clemson got a 58. And I kind of agree with them. But LSU, good job, Brian Kelly and LSU. They finally win an opener. They had lost their last 5. They were down 10-3 at the half, and they outscored Clemson 14-0 on the road to win the football game. Both have experienced quarterbacks. Both you thought would have good offenses heading into this season, and they still both might. But the good thing for LSU was that they've had a lot of questions defensively for the last, really since Brian Kelly got there, the last couple of years. And they've been working towards this. They've been very transfer portal heavy, but they finally seems like they have a group that is clicking defensively. And hey, they might be the SEC front runner at this point. Texas goes down, Bama goes down. They might be the ones to beat in the SEC. Look, this is a really big letdown for Clemson. They opened the year number 4 in the country. I was very high on them. I thought that they could be a national title contender. 3rd year of Cade Klubnik, a great wide receiving core, a defensive line that I thought was going to be maybe the best group in the country. And they just they can't scale against these SEC opponents. Listen to this stat. The last 4 games versus the SEC for Clemson, they played 3 last year and this one. 10 points, 24 points, 14 points, 3 points. They just can't put it together against SEC teams. Like I said, I thought the defensive line was going to be dominant. They only had 1 sack. And they might still make the playoff. The ACC is not that great. They might still make the playoff, but I don't envision them being a top-tier national title contender like I thought they would, and a lot of other people thought they would be heading into the year, because you can't score 10 and 3 and 14 points against these big-time teams and expect to win these games. They might still make the playoff, but they're not a top-tier contender, at least right now. We'll see how they finish the year. All right, Notre Dame and Miami, Sunday night game. This was a fun one. This was a fun one. This is what you wanted to see. Carson Beck, he deserves an apology from everybody. I know you thought he stunk when he left Georgia. He was maybe booted from Georgia, told go ahead to Miami. Last year, heading into the year, everyone thought he might be the number 1 overall pick. He's not. He's at Miami. He tore his elbow at the end of last year, and he looked very good. The Miami defensive line is unbelievable. Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor, they got to C.J. Carr, and they made him pretty uncomfortable all night long. Miami was up big. They blew, I think it was a 14-point lead, but they had the guts to come back on offense. Carson Beck specifically, stand in there and drive for the game-winning field goal. Now Notre Dame, I think they're still a good team, but this was a tough loss. Jeremiah Love, who a lot of people think is the best running back in the country, he had 10 carries for 33 yards. 10 carries for 33 yards for the best running back in the country. C.J. Carr, it was his first start. He actually was pretty good. He threw for 200 yards, had a couple of touchdowns. He had a pick. But for his first career start, I thought he was pretty good. And, the reason this is such a big loss for Notre Dame is, they don't have a whole lot on their schedule, but they've got Texas A&M coming into South Bend in a couple of weeks. Could they have 2 losses before September is even over for a team that AP poll voters at least thought was a top 6 team in the country heading into the year? Okay, now for the big one, Alabama and FSU. I recognize that most people are very happy with this result. 31-17, Florida State beats Bama, and it was shocking. Tommy Castellanos, Florida State quarterback, he talked a lot of trash about Alabama in the offseason and this week, and he went and backed it up. His stat line won't show it, but he was awesome. He was awesome in this game. And that leads me to the question, what is FSU this year? I mean, they were 2-10 last year. They were 13-0 a year before, won the ACC. I mean, they're probably at least back in the ACC title race. I don't know what to expect from Alabama or from Florida State. They could end up 6-6, or they could be one of the top dogs in the ACC. For Alabama, this was a really disheartening game. It looked like they had nothing to play for, or they had no heart. There were a lot of guys loafing on the field when the ball was in play. It looked like they gave up there in the fourth quarter too. And I know Ty Simpson was getting a lot of hate for his performance. I didn't think he looked that bad. I'm very hesitant to blame him for this loss because Alabama they didn't show up. He at least was standing there in the fire and was willing to stand in there and take some hits and keep trying. They need somebody in that locker room that's going to hold people accountable, and it can't be Kalen DeBoer because you need players that are going to hold each other accountable. I don't think they have that. They're 5-5 in their last 10 games under Kalen DeBoer, and there's no honeymoon for him anymore. They went 9-3. They missed the playoff last year, and people said, okay, it's his first year. He'll get it rolling. They're recruiting great. They're getting rolling. No, they have to win this year. They have to win. The fan base will not accept an 8-4 year in year 2 of Kalen DeBoer. I don't know if they'll accept a 9-3 again this year. I think they have to go 10-2 and get into the playoff, or else it becomes really uncomfortable for Kalen DeBoer down in Tuscaloosa. Okay, for games coming up this Saturday, Iowa and Iowa State. We had a great slate last weekend. We have a little bit of a lull here in week 2, but hey, we love all these games the same. Iowa at Iowa State. Iowa State is a 3.5-point favorite. It's a battle for the Cy-Hawk Trophy. It's a fun game. It's always low scoring and very back and forth. Now, what is Iowa this year? That's really the question. We've already seen Iowa State win a pretty big game. Iowa really put a lot of hopes and dreams on their transfer quarterback, Mark Gronowski. He's coming up from the FCS level, and he really struggled against Albany last weekend. He was 8 of 15. He had 44 yards passing. Iowa historically struggles on offense, but they really thought that this guy could turn everything around offensively for them, and he still might. They're running back by committee as well. They had 53 rushing attempts. I don't expect them to have that many against Iowa State. I think part of that was because they knew Gronowski was struggling. Iowa State's quarterback, Rocco Becht, is the best player in this game. Like I said, this game's always low scoring. The game is in Ames. Let's get to the prediction. Like I said, Iowa State minus 3.5. I think they win outright and they cover. I just think Rocco Becht is too good of a player, and I don't trust what Iowa has on the other side. They got through the Ireland game and the travel a couple of weeks ago, and I just think Iowa State is good enough to win this game again. Last year they won on a last-second kick. I think they do it again. All right, the big one is Michigan and Oklahoma this weekend. Oklahoma is a 5.5-point favorite in this game. Last Thursday, they were a 2.5-point favorite. So this line has moved a lot in the last few days. For Michigan last week, we saw why they paid a lot of money for Bryce Underwood. He looked really crisp. True freshman, first game, he looked pretty good. He looked really good. In control, and he throws a really good ball. Justice Haynes, he's an Alabama transfer running back. He really went crazy last week too. He had 16 rushes for 159 yards and 3 touchdowns. And when you have a back like that, you're going to help open up some wide receivers there on the outside as well. For Oklahoma, John Mateer, he's their new starter. He comes with his offensive coordinator from Washington State, Ben Arbuckle, into Norman, and I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country that people aren't really talking about. I think he has an outside shot to win the Heisman if Oklahoma is as good as I think that they can be. And Oklahoma does have one of the best talent rosters in the country. They really do. They have a lot of guys. All right, let's get to the prediction. I think Oklahoma, even with this line moving more towards Oklahoma, I still think they're going to win, and I think they're going to cover. I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan puts up a really good fight, but the questions I have is, like I said, Bryce Underwood, a true freshman quarterback, going on the road into Norman, Oklahoma, that's going to be a tough spot for him to be in. Can he stay cool? I just think Oklahoma has a little bit too much. If this game was at the end of the year and Bryce Underwood had 10 games under his belt, I think it might be a different story. But I'll pick Oklahoma outright and to cover the 5.5. And for the game that everybody cares about here in Central Illinois, Illinois at Duke this weekend. You can see the new ranking for Illinois there, number 11 in the country. They move up one spot. This is a scary game. This is a really scary game, I think, for Illinois. It's obviously their first road game of the year, and it's a true test, not because the Duke crowd is going to be going crazy or because there's going to be 110,000 people in that stadium. That's not what it is. I just think Duke is a pretty good football team, and you're going on the road for the first time. The good thing for Illinois is that they have a lot of experience, and these are a lot of guys that have done these road trips before, obviously. But the first one of the season, I think it's a little nerve-wracking, and we'll get to the line a little bit later, but it's pretty small. Okay, for Duke, things you have to know. Darian Mensah, He is the new quarterback at Duke. He is a transfer from Tulane. You can see his numbers there from last year. This guy's really good. He can really sling it. They paid a lot of money to get this guy out of the portal. Don't be shocked if he ends up throwing for 300 yards on Saturday afternoon. He's a pretty good player. He's mobile. He's not a runner. They're not going to run a lot of designed runs for him, but he can get away and, when you scramble and pick up those 3rd and 8 first downs on a scramble that can really be backbreaking. He can do that. Last week, first look against Elon, he looked good. The Duke team overall didn't look great until really the midway through the third quarter. But this is a guy, and he's really going to test the Illinois back end. The question really is, can Gabe Akis and that defensive front get to him and swallow him up and get him to the ground? Defensively for Duke, they were very average last year, and that is not what you expect from a Manny Diaz coached team. I mean, look at those ranks. They're all in the 50s or the 60s. They had 36th ranked interceptions, but that's a very average defense. They went and got a lot of help in the portal. Jaden Francois from UCF at linebacker, he was all over the field against Elon. He's a really good player. It's his 5th year. He's a good player. And then Trey Freeman is the other linebacker that you need to be aware of. He can really lay the boom, and I think he could be an All-American at linebacker this year. He's a 2-time All-ACC, so I think he could be an All-American. But there are going to be some windows, I think, for Luke Altmaier to throw against this Duke defense, and there's no reason to think that he won't be able to actually do that. These teams are very familiar with each other. At least Manny Diaz and Illinois are familiar with each other. Obviously, he was the defensive coordinator at Penn State for a couple of years, and then, of course, they played last year. So these two teams, they know each other pretty well. Second straight year playing. They're pretty familiar, and vice versa. Illinois knows them as well. Here's what the Illinois coaches had to say this week about the Duke team that they're about to be facing on Saturday.
Extremely gifted, athletic, smooth, reads things extremely well, has the ability to escape. I wouldn't classify him as a runner, but he definitely can run and escape and make things happen with his feet. You can see they're using him in a way that they recruit him for a reason. Got some good players around him. I think they've added a couple transfer guys in the receiving corps and in the running back room. Obviously instilled a starter at day one and left guard. So had 4 of the 5 back up front, but I think they knew they had a good offensive line coming back, and they wanted to secure that QB position. He's obviously one of the best in the country.
I mean, he's special, man. I mean, this is just one of, I'll probably say, a handful of NFL quarterbacks we're going to face. This dude's going to play on Sunday. Very special player, live arm. Throws a beautiful ball from the pocket. I mean, he just the way he delivers and diagnoses things. I think they give him some freedom in that offense, whether he's making checks or calling certain plays. I mean, he's as gifted as they come.
Just going over the last couple of years, the structure dating back out here, the structure of the defense, and to your point, the teams are different, but the belief system, the foundation of the belief system hasn't changed much. It's evolved, but the foundation hasn't changed a whole lot, and they believe in what they're doing, and it's good reason because they play it very well and cause a lot of people problems.
So what do we think about this game? I think if you're an Illinois fan and you're not scared about this game, I don't know what you're thinking. I am nervous for Illinois in this game. Overall, though, I do think that Illinois is the better team, and I know they're heading on the road, but I think Illinois is going to win this game. I'll take Duke to cover. This line's 2.5. I actually think it'll probably move more towards Duke. So I'll take the 2.5 here today for Duke. But I think Illinois is going to win. This is going to be a nasty game, I think. I think it's going to be pretty tight. Well, look, for Illinois, over the course of this year, if they want to get where they want to go, they have to win this game. This is not a game that they can drop. Guys, can we bring up Illinois' schedule there? Yeah. Okay, you can see they already knocked off Western Illinois. They got Duke. If they lose this game, then their next real opponent is on the road at a ranked Indiana. The SC game becomes pretty scary as well. They've got the number 1 team in the country coming in. Washington, I think, is really good this year. And then they end the year with 4 winnable games as well. So, you can't drop one here and then USC comes into play, Indiana comes into play, maybe even Purdue because that's a rivalry game. But this isn't one that they can drop. And I don't think they will, but I wouldn't be surprised if late in that game down in Durham, they need Luke Altmaier to make a play, or they need Gabe Akis to go force a turnover to win that game. All right, that's the first episode of Inside the Illini Weekly. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to do this every single week until Illinois football is done playing for the year, and hopefully that means we get, 15, 16 games. Maybe they can get into the Big Ten championship, into the college football playoff. I'd like to do this as long as we can. Thank you so much for watching. Tell your friends about it. On the WAND Now app every Tuesday night. Enjoy Saturday. Just enjoy it. You only got so many every year. You only got so many in your life, so enjoy it. And we'll be back here next Tuesday. See ya.